That day, no one imagines it could ever end. The bride's smile lights up the room. Her friends tease her, hiding tears behind laughter. The groom looks at her like he's found the only person he'll ever need. In that moment, love feels infinite, untouched by time, untouched by reality. Every couple believes their story will be different. No one gets married thinking they'll become strangers. But life after the music fades is different. Bills, pressure, expectations, they start to whisper in the background. The same hands that once held each other begin pointing fingers. The same words that once healed now cut deeper than silence. And somewhere between "I love you" and "leave me alone," divorce begins, quietly, invisibly, long before anyone says the word. It always begins with joy. That day when everything feels right, when even the smallest detail seems touched by magic. The music plays softly, families gather, and for a few precious hours the world feels perfect. The groom looks at his bride like he's just witnessed a miracle. The bride can't stop smiling, even when her friends whisper and tease her. Every laugh, every nervous glance, every blessing feels like a promise that this happiness will last forever. He stands there, wearing a suit he's never looked better in, wondering how he got so lucky. She walks toward him, her hands trembling, her heart racing, her eyes full of hope. The moment their eyes meet, they both silently agree that this feeling is what they've been searching for their whole lives. They believe love will protect them from everything that could go wrong. The guests cheer. Someone shouts, "Made for each other." And for that one moment, it's true. The bride's friends steal glances at the groom and giggle. The groom's friends whisper jokes to hide their emotions. Every photo captures not just two people, but two worlds joining. Two families, two dreams, two futures woven together with laughter and perfume and the sound of clinking glasses. Later that night, when the noise fades and it's just the two of them, they talk about everything they'll do together. The trips they'll take, the home they'll build, the kids they'll raise. They promise to never let life get boring. They say things like, "We'll always be like this," because in that moment, they really mean it. Every marriage begins with the belief that they'll be different, that they'll beat the odds. No one gets married expecting to fail. The first months are full of sweetness. Small notes on the fridge, late-night talks that stretch until sunrise. Every disagreement ends with laughter and a tight hug. They learn each other's routines, quirks, and moods. He learns how she likes her coffee. She learns when to let him think he's right, even when he's not. They begin to build that private world every couple dreams of, the one that feels safe, secret, and theirs alone. In those early days, compromise doesn't feel like sacrifice. When she gives up her favourite show so he can watch his game, it feels like love. When he helps her cook even though he doesn't like the kitchen, it feels like devotion. Both are learning that love is not just passion, it's patience, humour, and the ability to forgive quickly. They believe that if they keep doing these small acts of love, nothing will ever go wrong. But slowly, something begins to shift. Quietly, gently, like the change of a season. The excitement starts to fade, but they don't notice it at first. They still care, but the spark that once felt like a fire now feels like a candle that needs constant relighting. She starts missing the way he used to listen so deeply. He starts missing the way she used to look at him like he was everything. They tell themselves it's just comfort, that this is what mature love looks like. Days turn into months, work gets heavier, bills pile up, real life enters the house that once smelled of flowers and new furniture. The same couple that once promised forever now fights over who forgot to buy milk. The goodnight texts become silent stares across the bed. They don't realise it yet, but the rhythm of love has changed its beat. She starts holding back words to avoid fights. He starts spending longer hours outside the house, pretending it's just work. They still love each other, but it's getting harder to show it. The connection that once felt effortless now feels like something they must protect, and they're already tired. Then come the small cracks no one wants to admit. The mornings where he scrolls his phone instead of saying good morning. The nights when she turns away, pretending to sleep because she doesn't want another cold conversation. No one screams, no one cries, and maybe that's worse, because quiet distance feels safer than painful honesty. Friends still comment, "You two are perfect together," and they smile, pretending it's true. The pictures still look beautiful, the posts still sound loving, but the energy has changed. What once felt like partnership now feels like performance. Deep down, both sense something's off. She feels lonely even when he's right there. He feels unappreciated even when she's trying her best. They're still under one roof, but emotionally, they've started living in two different worlds. That's how most stories begin to fall apart, not with betrayal or cruelty, but with slow neglect. With comfort turning into distance, with love turning into routine. No one means to break it. They just stop noticing the small things that built it. And yet, even here, there's no villain. Just two tired hearts that forgot how to meet halfway. The wedding day memories still flash sometimes. The laughter, the friends, the promises, and both wonder, where did that version of us go? The truth is, it never vanished all at once. It faded quietly, like light leaving the sky at sunset. And while they keep living, working, surviving, something precious between them keeps slipping away. That's where every divorce story really begins. Not in the courtroom, not in a fight, but in those silent moments when love still exists. Just not loud enough to be heard anymore. Divorce doesn't start in the courtroom. It starts in the living room. It starts in the kitchen, between two people who used to talk for hours, but now pass each other like strangers. It begins quietly, in moments so small that most couples don't even notice them. One person looks up from their phone and realizes it's been weeks since they laughed together. The other realizes they can't remember the last time they were touched with real warmth, not just habit. That's how emotional disconnection begins, not with a big explosion but with a slow, invisible fade. At first, it's easy to ignore. She tells herself he's just busy. He tells himself she's just tired. Both keep pretending that things are fine, because pretending feels safer than facing the truth. They still share the same bed, still watch the same shows, still post pictures that say happy. But inside, something has changed. They're together, but they're not connected anymore. Those little moments that used to mean everything slowly start to disappear. The morning kiss before work becomes a quick nod. The "how was your day" turns into silence over dinner. The laughter that once filled the house is replaced with background noise. TV, notifications, anything to avoid another awkward conversation. And that's how it starts, with tiny acts of emotional neglect that seem harmless at first. When one person speaks, and the other barely listens. When a problem is raised but brushed aside with, "we'll talk about it later," when later never comes. She starts feeling lonely even when he's sitting right next to her. He starts feeling unappreciated even when she's trying to keep things calm. They both start walking on eggshells, avoiding words that could trigger another fight. They call it keeping peace, but it's not peace. It's distance disguised as maturity. Then comes the silence. Not the comforting silence between two people who understand each other, but the kind that weighs heavy, that fills the room with tension. They stop sharing thoughts, feelings, little stories from their day. They stop checking in on each other emotionally. She starts venting to her friends instead. He starts staying out a little longer after work, not because they hate each other, but because being away feels easier than being near. This is when love starts starving. It doesn't die immediately, it just stops being fed. It starves quietly, like a flame left to burn on its own, waiting for someone to notice before it goes out completely. And most of the time, no one notices until the house is cold. The saddest part is that both think they're doing the right thing. She tells herself she's strong for holding it in. He tells himself he's patient for not arguing. They think avoiding conflict is saving the relationship, but all it's doing is burying the truth deeper. That's the biggest lie couples tell themselves, that silence is safer than honesty. But silence doesn't fix anything. It just hides the cracks until they turn into breaks. They normalize everything. The missing affection, the emotional distance, the separate lives under one roof. They call it routine. They convince themselves that this is how long-term relationships work, that passion always fades, that love eventually becomes habit. But deep down, they both miss the version of each other that used to exist, the one who used to care, who used to try. And that's when the dangerous kind of resentment starts to grow. Quiet resentment. Not loud fights or dramatic arguments, but quiet ones that eat you alive from the inside. She starts remembering every time she felt ignored. He starts replaying every time she made him feel small. Both start keeping mental lists, adding silent points every day, until one day, those lists become reasons to leave. If someone asked them, "When did your marriage start falling apart?" they wouldn't have an answer, because it didn't happen in one night. It happened slowly, through ignored emotions, missed chances, and pride, through those tiny moments when one person reached out and the other didn't notice. Psychologically, this is where the real divorce happens, long before the legal one. The heart signs the papers first. The body just takes longer to follow. Most couples think love ends when someone cheats, lies, or leaves. But in truth, it ends much earlier, when the small gestures stop meaning anything. When "how are you" becomes a formality. When "I'm fine" becomes a permanent mask. This stage is dangerous because it feels calm. There's no screaming, no broken plates, no tears, just a dull emptiness that settles between two people who used to be everything to each other. They stop fighting not because they've matured, but because they've given up. The passion that once created warmth now only fuels exhaustion. If you look closely at any failed marriage, you'll find that it didn't end in one moment of anger. It ended through months of emotional hunger. Every ignored feeling was a skipped meal. Every silent night was a missed opportunity to heal. And one day, they both wake up realizing they're strangers who share a past instead of a future. Love doesn't collapse. It erodes. It wears away through neglect, indifference, and the belief that it'll somehow fix itself. But nothing heals when both stop trying. That's the hidden beginning of every divorce. Not a fight, not betrayal, not a lawyer's name on paper. It starts the day love stops feeling alive, and no one does anything to bring it back. A woman doesn't leave overnight. She leaves slowly, quietly, one disappointment at a time. Long before she packs her bags, she starts packing her heart. At first, it's confusion, not anger. She wonders what changed. She tries to remember when her laughter started feeling forced. She replays the early days in her mind, looking for the moment he stopped noticing her. Was it after the first child? After the new job? Or maybe it happened so slowly that even time forgot to warn her. She still tries. She cooks his favourite meals. She waits for him to look up from his phone. She smiles when he walks in, hoping he'll see her the way he used to. But his eyes are somewhere else. On work, on stress, on anything but her. And every time he walks past her without really seeing her, something inside her dims a little more. That's where emotional deprivation begins. It's not about expensive gifts or big gestures. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, and unloved. She doesn't need perfection. She just wants to feel important again, to feel like she matters. But when her emotions are met with silence, she learns to stop sharing them. So she starts talking less. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she already knows how the conversation will end. Either with a sigh, a shrug, or worse, with no reaction at all. She starts keeping her thoughts to herself, her sadness tucked behind fake smiles. She tells herself she's just being mature, that arguments only make things worse. But deep down, she knows she's shrinking to fit a version of love that no longer fits her. This is when resentment begins to build. Not loud, angry resentment, quiet, invisible resentment that grows like dust in the corners. Every time he forgets to notice her effort, she adds a mark in her heart. Every time she feels dismissed or taken for granted, she adds another. She never says it out loud, but she's keeping score, not of who's right or wrong, but of how many times she felt alone while being in love. It's not that she stops loving him, it's that love starts feeling heavier to carry alone. She's still doing everything, taking care of the house, the kids, the schedule, but emotionally she's exhausted. She starts missing the version of herself who used to laugh easily, the woman who believed love could fix anything, and when someone, maybe a friend, maybe a stranger online, finally listens to her, even just for a few minutes, it feels like oxygen. Not because she's looking to cheat, but because for the first time in a long time someone makes her feel seen. That's how emotional validation begins. Softly, innocently. It might be a compliment, a message, or just attention she no longer gets at home. And before she even realizes it, her heart starts comparing. She starts wondering why it feels easier to open up to a stranger than to the man she once called home. She starts missing the feeling of being understood. It's not about falling for someone new, it's about remembering what it feels like to be wanted. By this stage, her emotional connection to her husband is barely alive. She still wakes up beside him, but her mind is somewhere else. In her thoughts, in her memories, or sometimes in a daydream where she feels free again. Then comes the detachment phase. She stops explaining, she stops complaining, she stops fighting, because deep down she already knows nothing will change. The arguments she used to start with tears now end with silence. The questions she used to ask now stay buried in her chest. She becomes calm, not peaceful, but emotionally numb, and he mistakes that calmness for stability, not realizing it's actually the quiet before the goodbye. This is the moment she mentally leaves, when she stops caring about winning the argument, when she no longer tries to fix what's broken, when whatever becomes her favorite word. She starts focusing on herself, her job, her kids, her friends. She pours her love into everything except him, and to outsiders she looks fine. She smiles, laughs, posts pictures, but inside she's miles away. She's not angry anymore, she's detached, and that's what makes it so final. Because when a woman detaches emotionally, there's almost no way back. She's not waiting for an apology. She's not hoping he'll suddenly change. She's already accepted that the person she fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe that he stopped showing up long ago. By the time she physically leaves, the relationship has already been over in her heart for months, maybe even years. That's what most men don't understand. By the time she says, "I'm done," she's not threatening. She's declaring. She's already crossed the emotional border, quietly, with tears no one saw. Psychologists often call this the silent exit. It's when a woman withdraws emotionally long before she walks away. It's not about revenge or punishment, it's about self-preservation. When love becomes a source of pain, she chooses peace, even if that peace means leaving. And the saddest part? He'll only notice when she's gone, when the silence becomes too loud, when her absence finally makes him realize how much noise her presence used to bring. That's when he'll remember all the small things she used to do, and how quietly she stopped doing them. By then, it's too late, because the version of her that begged, cried, and hoped is gone. That's how most divorces begin, not with a fight, but with a quiet goodbye whispered in her heart long before anyone hears it. Men rarely notice the beginning of the end. Not because they don't care, but because most of them are taught not to look too deep. They believe that as long as the bills are paid and the house is standing, everything is fine. They confuse stability with happiness, silence with peace, and her quietness with contentment. At first, he doesn't see it. He walks in after a long day, drops his keys, eats his dinner, scrolls his phone, and assumes everything's normal. She's not complaining, so she must be okay. He mistakes her silence for understanding, not realizing it's actually the sound of her giving up. And even if he senses something's off, he tells himself it'll pass. Men are raised to not make things dramatic. So he waits for the tension to fix itself, but it never does. That's emotional blindness, not evil, just unawareness. He sees her mood change but doesn't ask why. He feels her distance but tells himself she's just stressed. He doesn't realize that every time he dismisses her feelings, she pulls further away. And slowly, without knowing, he becomes part of the reason she's fading. Then comes the ego, quiet but destructive. When she tries to talk, he takes it as criticism. When she cries, he feels attacked. Instead of listening, he defends himself. He doesn't mean to hurt her, but his pride doesn't let him admit he might be wrong. He thinks being a good husband means being strong, and strength, in his mind, means never showing weakness. So instead of saying, "I'm sorry," he shuts down. Instead of saying, "I miss us," he says nothing at all. Men are taught that vulnerability makes them look weak. So when love starts to fall apart, they hide behind logic and sarcasm. They say things like, "You're overreacting," or "Stop being so emotional," not realizing how deep those words cut. What he calls keeping calm feels to her like emotional abandonment. What he sees as not fighting feels to her like he's already gone. And each time he chooses pride over connection, another piece of their bond disappears. Sometimes frustration becomes his new language. He starts controlling what he can because he's losing what he can't. He raises his voice, not out of hate, but out of helplessness. He slams doors, stays silent for days, or gives short answers to punish her without realizing it. It's not always physical, it's emotional. He uses withdrawal as a weapon, not because he wants to hurt her, but because it's the only way he knows how to express pain. Control isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, staying out late to make her worry, ignoring her messages to make her feel the distance he feels inside. In his mind, it's balance. In reality, it's self-sabotage. Every time he pulls away to teach her a lesson, she learns one, that he no longer cares enough to fight for her. When she finally stops reacting, he feels relieved at first. He thinks, finally the drama is over. He doesn't see that she's not calm, she's detached. He confuses her emotional silence with maturity, not realizing it's her final goodbye in slow motion. So he finds distractions, work, friends, late nights, gym sessions, anything that makes him feel like life is still under control. He tells himself he's just busy, but really, he's avoiding the place that no longer feels like home. When he's praised at work, it feeds his ego. When his friends joke around, it gives him comfort. When someone else admires him, it makes him feel alive again, something he hasn't felt in his marriage for a long time. And that's how external validation creeps in. It doesn't always mean cheating. Sometimes it's just enjoying being noticed again. The smile from a coworker, the flirty message, the sense of importance that home stopped giving him. He's not chasing love, he's chasing feeling valued. But what he doesn't realize is that every time he looks outside for what's missing inside, he pushes her even further away. By the time he finally notices how distant she's become, it's already too late. He'll ask what went wrong, and she'll look at him with eyes that say, "I've been telling you for years." He'll beg for conversations he once avoided, for emotions he once dismissed, for connection he once took for granted. But she's not the same woman anymore. She's tired, calm, and finished. That's when the truth hits. Not like a slap, but like silence. He'll sit in the same house, on the same couch, surrounded by the same memories, but everything will feel empty. He'll finally notice the things he used to overlook, her perfume that lingers in the closet, her laugh in an old video, the warmth that's gone from the air. He'll realize that he didn't lose her in one big fight. He lost her through years of small moments he thought didn't matter. Men often learn too late that love doesn't die from big mistakes. It dies from small neglect. From all the times he said, "I'll fix it later." From all the times he stayed silent when she needed reassurance. From all the times he let pride speak louder than love. And when he finally reaches out, when he finally says, "Let's start over," she'll nod politely, but inside she'll know it's over. Because the man she wanted to stay never fought for her until she was already gone. That's how men destroy their marriages, not with hatred, but with absence, not with betrayal, but with blindness. And when they finally see it, they're left staring at the ruins of something they thought would last forever, whispering the same words that echo through millions of broken homes. "I thought we were fine." Every love story has a moment where everything changes, not slowly, not quietly, but sharply, like something finally snaps. It's not always loud, but you can feel it in the air. The distance that used to be silent turns into words, and once those words are spoken, nothing is the same again. It starts with a fight that doesn't look any different from the others. Maybe it's about something small, a missed call, a forgotten chore, a careless comment. But deep down, it's not about the dishes or the messages. It's about years of unheard pain finding a voice all at once. She says something she's been holding back for too long. He reacts with words he doesn't mean but can't stop himself from saying. And suddenly it's no longer about solving anything. It's about surviving the storm. In that fight, both defend themselves like they're fighting for their lives. She brings up everything she's ever swallowed in silence. He brings up every moment he felt disrespected or ignored. Every memory becomes ammunition. Every word is a weapon. They start talking not to be understood, but to win. Each one wants the other to feel what they've been feeling all along. This is where the blame game begins. It's not about truth anymore. It's about validation. She says, "You never listen." He fires back, "You're never satisfied." She cries, "You stopped caring." He shouts, "You made me stop." Both are right in their own way, but neither is listening. Each pain feels louder than the others, so they talk over it instead of through it. They're both defending their hurt as if it's proof of innocence. But in love, no one wins that kind of war, because the moment you start keeping score, love turns into competition, and the person you once wanted to protect becomes the person you need to defeat. After that fight, the silence feels different. It's not the calm before another argument. It's the calm after an emotional earthquake. Something has cracked open that can't be closed again. They both retreat to separate corners, physically or emotionally. She cries quietly, not out of anger but out of exhaustion. He stares at the wall, replaying everything she said, trying to decide whether she's right or just cruel. But deep down, both know this wasn't just another argument. Something broke tonight. Days pass and the distance widens. They speak less, and when they do, it's only about practical things. Bills, kids, chores. No more, "How are you?" No more, "I missed you." Just two people managing a life they no longer share emotionally, and each time they avoid the real conversation, they drift a little further apart. This is emotional exhaustion, when love is still there, but too tired to try. They've both said too much, and too little at the same time. Too many harsh words, not enough understanding. Too much pain, not enough hope. They've been circling the same arguments for so long that even peace feels fake now. She stops crying, he stops explaining. They start existing instead of living, and when that happens, it's usually the beginning of the end. Sometimes there's one final attempt, one last late-night talk. It starts calm, almost gentle. Someone says, "We can't keep living like this." The other nods. No anger, no shouting this time, just acceptance. She might whisper, "I don't feel loved anymore." He might reply, "I don't know how to fix it." And in that moment, both realize the truth. Love alone isn't enough anymore. Not when trust is bruised, not when hearts are tired. So one of them says the words that hang heavy in the air, "Maybe we should separate." Or worse, "I can't do this anymore." It's never said dramatically like in the movies. It's soft, final, like closing a door that's been open too long, and even if they both saw it coming, hearing it still hurts. There's a long pause, that kind of silence that makes you feel your heartbeat in your ears. Sometimes one person cries while the other just stares blankly. Sometimes no one cries at all, because the tears ran out months ago. After that, routines become rituals of ending. He starts sleeping on one side of the bed, she on the other. Meals become quiet. Eye contact becomes rare. They move around the house like guests in their own lives, and even if they stay under the same roof for a while, they both know the relationship has already ended in spirit. The saddest part is that there's no villain here. No one planned this. They both wanted forever. They just didn't know how to keep it alive. The husband didn't mean to destroy her trust. The wife didn't mean to fall out of love. They just forgot how to meet each other halfway. And now, love has turned into memory. They'll remember the laughter, the holidays, the small inside jokes. They'll remember the day they promised to never become strangers, and how they did exactly that. Each will blame themselves quietly, wondering if one more "I'm sorry" could have changed anything. But some things don't break all at once. They fade, and when they finally collapse, it's just the last breath of something that's been dying for a long time. And so, the decision is made, not out of anger, but out of fatigue. Because when two people are too tired to fight for love, walking away feels easier than holding on. It's not a victory, it's surrender. That's the turning point, the moment the dream dies and reality begins. When two people who once promised forever look at each other one last time and realize, forever just ended. When a marriage breaks, it's never just two people who feel it. There are small hearts in the middle, confused, scared, and silently watching everything unfold. Children don't understand the politics of love, but they feel every shift in the air. They hear the tone, the sighs, the slammed doors, and the heavy silence that hangs over dinner. At first, they try to make sense of it. Mum and Dad used to laugh together, used to hold hands. Now they argue about everything. Money, time, even who forgot to close the lights. A child doesn't know about emotional disconnection or pride. They only know that love suddenly sounds angry and looks cold. And because children are naturally innocent, they often blame themselves. They think maybe if they behaved better, the fights wouldn't happen. Maybe if they cleaned up their toys faster or got better grades, things would go back to normal. That's the first wound, confusion mixed with guilt. They start carrying a responsibility that was never theirs to carry. They try to become little peacemakers. They hug Mom when she cries and tell Dad she didn't mean it. They believe they can fix what two adults couldn't. But when their efforts don't work, they start feeling helpless. They see the same argument repeat again and again and slowly realize love doesn't always win. That realization breaks something inside them that never fully heals. Then comes the hardest part, the split loyalty. The house becomes divided ground. Mum tells her version, Dad tells his. Each says they're protecting the child, but what the child really feels is torn apart. They love both parents, but now loving one feels like betraying the other. They start hiding emotions. If they smile too much around Dad, they worry Mum will feel hurt. If they defend Mum, they fear Dad will feel rejected. So they learn to play neutral, too mature for their age, too quiet for their feelings. This kind of emotional tug-of-war changes them. It teaches them to be careful with love, to walk on emotional eggshells, to keep peace even when they're hurting. They become experts at pretending. And when they grow up, they carry that same habit into their relationships, always afraid that showing feelings will start a fight. Then there's the emotional imprint, the deep subconscious lessons they take from watching their parents. Children don't learn love from advice. They learn it by watching how their parents treat each other. If they saw yelling, manipulation, or emotional distance, that becomes their definition of normal. Even if they promise themselves they'll be different, the pattern often repeats. Because deep down, their brain equates love with pain, affection with arguments, closeness with risk. A boy who watched his father shut down may grow into a man who avoids emotions, thinking silence is strength. A girl who saw her mother constantly trying to be enough may grow into a woman who overgives in every relationship. They don't mean to repeat the cycle, it's just what feels familiar. And in the human heart, familiar often feels safer than healthy. Many children of broken homes grow up wearing invisible armor. They learn to depend only on themselves. They love cautiously, expecting abandonment. They crave stability but fear commitment. And when someone gets too close, their childhood memories whisper, "Don't trust it, it won't last." Even years later, the smallest things can trigger that old pain. A raised voice in an argument, a slammed door, or even the sound of silence. It all brings them back to those nights they spent pretending to sleep while their parents argued in the next room. That's the trauma that doesn't leave. It hides in their behavior, their choices, and their way of giving love. And then there's the quiet wound, the one no one talks about, the feeling of being unwanted. When parents are consumed by their own pain, the child feels invisible. They see Mum crying and Dad walking out, and no one stops to ask, "How are you feeling through all this?" They start believing their emotions don't matter, so they suppress them, bury them deep, and grow into adults who struggle to express love or need help. As they grow older, they try to build their own relationships, but that inner child still lives inside, scared, protective, cautious. They either cling too tightly or push people away too quickly. They mistake drama for passion, distance for strength. And when things start falling apart, they feel the same helplessness they once felt watching their parents. Not every child from a broken home is doomed to repeat it, but every one of them carries something, a question, a scar, a fear. They wonder, if love broke them, will it break me too? And that thought alone shapes the way they love, trust and forgive. The long-term wound isn't always visible. It shows up in quiet ways. A person who can't sleep in silence, a partner who avoids confrontation, a spouse who stays even when unhappy because leaving feels like failure. They carry fragments of their parents' story into their own, even when they swore they wouldn't. And sometimes, when they finally become parents themselves, they look at their children and realize how much their own childhood still hurts. They finally understand what their parents must have felt, the pain, the confusion, the desperation. But understanding doesn't erase the scars, it just teaches them to try harder not to pass them on. That's the real tragedy of divorce. It doesn't end when the papers are signed. It echoes through generations. Because when a family breaks, it doesn't just change two lives, it reshapes the definition of love for everyone who witnessed it. Children don't forget what they saw. They may forgive, they may move on, but deep inside, a part of them always wishes for something that never came. A home where love stayed even when life got hard. When the papers are finally signed, it feels like breathing after years of suffocation. For a moment, both believe it's freedom. No more fights, no more tension, no more walking on eggshells. The silence that once felt heavy now feels peaceful. They wake up in their own beds, make their own coffee, and think, "I'm finally free." In those first few weeks, there's a strange sense of relief. She rearranges the house, paints the walls, buys new curtains, anything to erase the memories. He dives into work, reconnects with friends, tries to fill the emptiness with activity. They both post pictures that say, "I'm doing fine." They go out more, laugh more, convince themselves that letting go was the right thing. For a while it even feels true, but freedom has layers, and the deeper ones are heavier. When the excitement of independence fades, a new kind of silence begins, one that doesn't feel peaceful anymore. The house feels too quiet now, the bed feels too big. Every corner of the home still carries a ghost, a voice, a laugh, a smell. The freedom that once felt liberating starts to sting like loneliness. Reality hits hardest in the ordinary moments, when she hears a song they once danced to, when he cooks for one instead of two, when birthdays and holidays come and the table feels smaller. That's when the truth sinks in. They didn't just lose a marriage, they lost a part of their identity. For years they were us. Now they're just me, and that transition feels like losing a limb. The habits remain, reaching for a hand that's no longer there, saving a joke for someone who won't hear it, waiting for a message that will never come. It's not about love anymore, it's about relearning how to exist alone. Then comes the guilt, the quiet kind that no one sees. It creeps in during sleepless nights, whispering questions that don't have answers. Could I have tried harder? Did I give up too soon? They replay every moment, every word, every silence, searching for where it truly went wrong. Even if they know the marriage couldn't be saved, guilt doesn't care about logic. It just reminds them of the pieces they could have handled differently. Financial and social struggles soon follow. Bills that used to be shared now feel twice as heavy. Friends start picking sides, sometimes unintentionally. Family members stop asking questions because they don't know what to say. The world moves on, but inside both are still catching their breath. The woman who once balanced everything now feels overwhelmed by responsibilities she never faced alone. The man who once seemed strong now feels lost without the emotional rhythm of a shared home. They both start realizing how much teamwork it really took to survive life together, something they only notice once it's gone. And yet, amid all this, nostalgia begins to sneak in. It doesn't come like a storm, it comes like a whisper. A memory here, a scent there. Maybe she walks past their favourite cafe. Maybe he sees an old photo pop up on his phone. For a few seconds, the pain softens, and they remember the good parts. The laughter, the inside jokes, the quiet nights that once felt safe. They wonder if it was really all that bad, or if they just stopped trying too soon. This nostalgia isn't about wanting each other back. It's about realising that even broken love once had meaning. They start seeing the beauty in moments they ignored while chasing perfection. The small things that seemed trivial, a cup of tea, a late-night talk, a random smile, now feel precious in memory. And that's when the hardest truth appears. Love didn't fail overnight. It faded because no one protected it when it mattered most. Slowly, reflection replaces regret. Both start to see their part in the story. She realises that silence wasn't strength, it was distance. He realises that pride wasn't power, it was fear. They both understand that no one truly wins in divorce, they just survive differently. And maybe, if they had known how to listen earlier, how to stay humble, how to fight for connection instead of control, maybe the story would have been different. Some nights they lie awake and imagine alternate endings. A version where they talked instead of shouted, where they reached for each other instead of turning away, where they said "I love you" one more time before it was too late. But life doesn't allow rewinds, only lessons. Over time the pain softens, the wounds become scars, still visible but no longer bleeding. They begin to rebuild differently this time. He learns to open up without fear, she learns to set boundaries without guilt. Both carry the lessons into their next chapters, more aware, more cautious, more human. But no matter how far they move on, a small part of them will always look back. Not out of longing, but out of remembrance. Because once you've loved deeply, even when it ends, it never truly disappears. It becomes a quiet part of who you are. The reminder that love is fragile, and if you stop watering it, it doesn't die suddenly. It fades, one forgotten moment at a time, and maybe that's the truest aftermath of divorce. Not anger, not bitterness, but the quiet acceptance that two people once tried, and for a while, they really did love each other. They just didn't know how to stay. When two people stand at the end of a marriage, they often look back and try to find a single moment to blame. But the truth is, it's never one fight, one word, or one mistake that ends it. It's a series of small moments, quiet choices, unspoken feelings, missed chances that slowly pull them apart. Divorce doesn't begin with a signature. It begins the day love becomes silent. It's easy to point fingers after it's over. She says, he stopped caring. He says, she stopped loving. But deep down, both know they played a part, because relationships don't end when one person changes. They end when both stop noticing. The husband may have ignored her emotions and the wife may have stopped reaching out. He got lost in pride and she got lost in pain. Both were trying to protect themselves, not realizing they were hurting each other in the process. That's the hard truth. Both are responsible in different ways. She destroyed him with her silence. He destroyed her with his absence. She needed understanding. He needed respect. But neither got what they needed, and neither had the tools to fix it. So they built walls instead of bridges, and when love finally knocked on those walls, no one opened the door. In the end, there's no villain, no good or bad, just two human beings, both tired, both flawed, both doing their best with what they knew. They didn't fail because they didn't love enough. They failed because they forgot how to love in the right way. The real enemy was never each other. It was everything that crept in quietly between them. Ego, pride, emotional neglect, and silence. Ego made them want to win every argument. Pride made them hide their pain. Neglect made them forget that love needs daily effort. And silence. Silence finished what time had already weakened. Ego whispers, don't apologize first. Pride says, don't show weakness. And silence says nothing at all. It just kills love slowly. Most people don't realize that relationships aren't destroyed by big betrayals. They're destroyed by all the small moments when one person needed to be seen and the other was too busy defending their own feelings. By the time they both realize it, love is still there, but it's starved, too weak to survive another argument. That's why the saying is true. Divorce begins the day honesty ends. Not honesty with your partner, honesty with yourself. When you stop being honest about how lonely you feel, when you start pretending everything is fine to avoid confrontation, when you ignore the emotional distance because it's easier than fixing it, that's when the real separation begins. Long before you even think of leaving. Love isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, noticing when something's off and caring enough to bring it up. But when awareness turns into avoidance, the relationship quietly dies, and both people wake up one day realizing they don't recognize each other anymore. After divorce, many realize that the war they were fighting wasn't with their partner. It was with themselves, with their ego, their fear, their unhealed wounds. Because when two people fall in love, they bring not just affection but history, childhood pain, insecurities, emotional patterns. If those wounds aren't understood, they repeat. That's why the same story plays out again and again in different homes with different faces but the same ending. But it doesn't have to be that way. If people learn to pause, to speak before the silence grows, to listen before pride speaks, maybe more relationships would survive. Because love doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for presence. She needed him to say, I see you. He needed her to say, I believe in you. But both waited for the other to go first. And by the time they realized love isn't a competition, it was already too late. So here's the lesson, not just for them, but for anyone watching this right now. Love doesn't die because of bad people. It dies because of distance, because of silence, because of ego disguised as strength. The strongest couples aren't the ones who never fight. They're the ones who fight for each other instead of against each other. If you're still in a relationship, remember this. Your partner can't read your mind. If you're hurting, speak. If you feel unseen, say it. Don't wait for the other person to notice, because sometimes by the time they do, the damage is already done. And if you're divorced or healing, forgive yourself. You did what you knew. You loved the best way you could with the tools you had. Learn from it, but don't live in it. Love again, wiser this time, not colder. Because the point of pain isn't to make you bitter. It's to make you more aware of what love really needs. In the end, every failed marriage leaves behind two people who were once deeply in love. That's what makes it so tragic and so human. They didn't lose because they were bad. They lost because they were human. And sometimes being human means learning lessons the hardest way possible. So before you blame or regret, just pause and ask yourself one thing. Was it ego that ended it? or was it silence? Because one person always leaves first, not physically but emotionally. And that's the beginning of every ending. When the story ends, there's no applause, just silence. Two people walk away carrying pieces of a life they once built together. The photos remain, the memories stay, and somewhere deep inside, a part of them still hopes the other is doing fine. Because love, no matter how it ends, always leaves a trace. It changes how you see the world, how you give, how you forgive. And maybe that's the real purpose of it all, not to last forever, but to teach us what forever truly means. So if you're still holding on, talk before silence wins. If you've already let go, heal with grace. And remember, endings aren't always losses. Sometimes they're just love's way of teaching us how to begin again.